I clicked start streaming, so it is streaming. Let me make sure we are live though, because sometimes it's evil.
Delay.
We are live. Alright. Hey guys, so it's me, Sam Oser. I am live with Joe from Georgia. He is a progressive who was recently arrested by the Georgia Democratic Party. So, excuse the trippiness. We're going to go over to him real quick. Boom. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
So, this is Joe. He's a progressive in Georgia, and like I said, he was arrested for challenging party leadership. Joe, could you walk us through like what happened with that before I show them the video of you getting arrested?
Sure. So what leads up to this moment essentially is years of myself and others, peers, not just young folks and not just new folks in the party, but folks that just want the party to follow its own rules and treat everyone fairly. Basically, us trying to hold them accountable and them partnering with their allies at the state executive level to essentially use law enforcement to remove the people they disagree with or those that are in any way connected to reform. So,
yeah. So, excuse the trippiness again. We're going to go over to the video where he got arrested. So over here you guys see Progressives for Democratic Reform. This is a page that Joe created to kind of catalog what's going on the progressive side in Georgia. So I'm going to come over here and click play. We're going to watch.
All right, let me ask a question.
I'm going to turn it up real quick.
Thank you very much. All right. Now, 12 district chairs, now to give the floor back to the Democratic.
It's on the 7th of October.
12 districts are not recognized Joe Tremor. What does that mean?
Noted, sir. The time is 7:08. Now calling this meeting to order.
You all know that I've always been exceedingly balanced with this moment, respecting personal faith, and pulling from different traditions.
I think I started it a little too early, so I'm going to fast forward just a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I think the whole thing is like 20 minutes.
Yeah. And here's the part where they're about to arrest him.
If you don't,
So I'm just sitting there, essentially.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. What is that? Listen, step up. Okay. You have a warrant? No, but I need you to step up.
This is so sad.
You should explain why I'm
Point of order.
You are removing a member of this committee without any due process.
There are 3 justifications for banning somebody from the meeting.
You are totally ignoring the bylaws of the Georgia Democratic Party.
Yes, you are.
Or the owners.
He has been removed without any due process.
I thought the Democrats were supposed to be the good guys.
We will oppose you at this at every moment.
Y'all are
You are
out
out
of
of
order.
order.
Arms to remove Mr. Jim McClellan.
So then they almost got that other guy removed. They didn't actually remove him, but they were about to have to get rid of half the room.
Wow. Yeah, so we're back on screen with you, Joe. So in the video, there was like a little blurb that says that they've gone without a secretary for 4 months. Could you like talk about their violations of basic bylaws that's supposed to be used?
Right. So, if you've ever been in student, government, or if you've ever, followed your city council, there's a couple of things that just kind of have to be done, before you can conduct any business. And in Democratic Party, organization, you have to have a couple basic things like a membership list, You have to have, you have to abide by Robert's Rules of Order to conduct business, which means you have to have a quorum, so a minimum amount of members present. And for that whole year, we determined that because their elections had been flawed and because they hadn't, actually held legitimate elections, it was impossible to determine who was a member. And so without membership, you couldn't decide quorum. So because you couldn't decide, who could vote and help conduct business. And at the same time, congruently, you also could not determine who the executives were. Now, the piece about the secretary in particular is interesting because this person had resigned, and the bylaws say that if you're gonna, if an executive resigns, then a two-person board is created to nominate others. Now, the reform folks, we had some ideas about, who might make a good secretary, but none of our suggestions were ever considered. And that was back in that was February of 18. We still don't have an actual elected secretary. Like, we still haven't. They're just kind of bending and breaking rules. The chair just assigns someone to be a temporary secretary, which is not a rule. It's not a law. It's like, if you're at a city council or, say your state house member resigns, it's just like, the Speaker of the House just appointing somebody without any due process and without an election, basically, without a democratic process to lead these things. And so, why this should matter, or, why it's not really just about me, is because this kind of stuff happens all over the country. There are county committees that serve as the gatekeepers for democratic politics, Democratic Party politics. And if our party organizations at the county level, which a lot of times operate without supervision, without the involvement of any oversight by the state, because they are essentially their own corporation, if we, the public, we the people, aren't watching, they're just going to steamroll us. And unfortunately, there's like three main, I could identify in three classes, I guess, within Democratic Party involvement. You've got your activist class of folks that, like to, host rallies and, they're more issue oriented, maybe more platform oriented. You've got your consultant class. These are the professionals that work on campaigns that want to, ultimately make money and make a living at politics. And then there's the party bureaucracy. These are folks that a lot of times at the county level may not do anything other than just keep a seat warm. And they are a lot of times the ones that are, the gatekeepers for folks that end up our superdelegates or end up the, our automatic delegates, what have you. And, at every stage of government, be it city council, school board, state house, these are the ones that when folks run for office, they're trying to rub elbows with. But there's a process to removing them. And what we did on the local level, at our level, before creating Progressives for Democratic Reform, or I guess in the process of it, was we looked at the bylaws. We read the bylaws. It's not a 20-page document. It's just a couple pages, and it just sets up kind of like when elections are supposed to be held, who the officers are, what their responsibilities are supposed to be, what kind of meeting frequency there is supposed to be. And it's not unique to the Democratic Party, but it's something that, if you don't know it, you're just kind of out of the loop on how it works.
Yeah. And
how it then influences so many other things related to government. And then, of course, when you get into the actual government, then you're talking about real dollars and cents, real important decisions that need to be made. And so, we thought, especially after 2016, we thought, all right, we need a better look at what's happening here. Who's pulling the strings? Who's making the decisions? Because they're obviously not doing enough. They're obviously not organizing well enough. And if I can just kind of fast forward to the present here, that was some time ago. I've been to court a couple times. They even when that didn't work, right? When arresting me for trespass didn't work because they can't legally.
Yeah, I mean, you were like, remember, you were participating. The biggest critique was like, "Whoa, get involved if you don't like what we're doing," and you got involved. and you got arrested for trespassing when you were sitting there partaking in democracy.
Right. As an elected member. At that point, I was elected in my own district, my own city district, to represent, my area. And so there were, it was a complete disregard for not just the bylaws, but also legal code section, right? And this is where the state gets more involved, right? It would be easy to dismiss this and say, oh, it's just some county, bigwigs, or some county, small town politics. Well, we had complained to the state already months ahead of time about different things that they were doing or failing to do. And we found out that, they had their own power brokers at the top. And it was described to me by an executive that essentially when it was time to vote on our issues, we kept losing by a 5-4 decision. So these executives, who had to make a decision about whether to either revoke our county charter or intervene at all whatsoever in any kind of mediation, they just kept kicking the can down the road by, again, these just 5-4 decisions where, four of them were, sympathetic to our cause and the need for reform. But because they had that other vote, basically allowing them to do nothing, or in some cases actually advise the county as to how to ignore us, we just the can just kept getting kicked down the road. And this is what brings us to now. We're in the middle of an election. Everyone's talking about Stacey Abrams. If you haven't heard about the blue wave in the South here, where folks are excited about getting Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum. Or, for some people who consider Maryland the South, I don't know, I'm a little iffy on it. Mr. NAACP chair. Name's blanking. Ben Jealous. Sorry, Ben Jealous.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if we're excited about getting these folks elected, we're going to need progressives on the team. We're going to need them knocking doors. We're going to need them making phone calls and, and growing the party and proving that we are the big tent we say we are, or alleged to be. Instead, what we're seeing is folks are getting kicked off these campaigns, and that's by and large due to the bureaucratic class. Again, the sort of the party bureaucracy, the seat warmers, in coalition with the consultant class, who again their whole objective is to just do the job, just get paid to run a campaign and manage things at that level. At that level, they're not trying to get into party politics. They're not trying. There are party level disagreements, right? They're just looking for path of least resistance to get to election day. And if in what happened with me, the decision was basically made: will it be better for us or easier for us to just take him off shifts? Which is what the county was asking to do, or actually the district at that point, the district chair who was from this county and a part of all the cabal problems. Their sort of calculation was: do we sacrifice an activist so that we can not anger the gatekeepers, the party sort of power broker position folks? And that calculation could cost us,
Yeah.
And that's why I hope that this conversation is important, or I hope that folks really consider what's happening, because this is the minutia that we miss. These are the details that the media doesn't pick up and turn into network fodder. These are the real decisions that are made on a daily basis on a campaign, or the decisions that can when they are made on a campaign affect our numbers, affect our capacity, affect our ability to reach folks, affect our buy-in. Because when folks hear about my story, even in my own area, they're disillusioned. They're further disappointed in the process. I'm at this weird intersection because I want them to get more involved. I know that there's tons of just crap, just total bull, associated with politics. But the answer to that is not less involvement; it's more involvement. And whatever you call yourself, whether it's a reformer or dementer, demexit, that really matters very little to me. What matters most is: are your eyes even on it? Do you even understand how the bureaucracy works? And what kind of movement or action would be beneficial? Because not everyone in the activist class is dementer or demexit or fits a nice, neat cookie cutter label.
No.
But if you're in the activist class, it's really helpful to understand what gears are working for and against you, kind of thing. I've always said that I'm a Democrat not because I think they have all the answers, but because I know that if I don't get involved in the process, we'll never find them.
Yeah.
We just if we're not at the table, if we're not fighting for our piece of that, and informing the decisions that get made ultimately, whether it's on a campaign or at a convention, which is another story. I got removed from the convention by them trying to use a protective order, which was, I guess I should start from the beginning there. So when the trespass didn't work, they tricked our third vice chair. Basically, they told her that they already had a protective order, and I wasn't respecting it. So they needed her to take out another one, or one for herself personally, to keep me from attending things. And there's an article I can share in the body of the post ultimately that shows this. But and I gotta hand it to my local media. They've actually done a pretty good job of covering what's been happening here.
Good. That's such a rarity to hear.
I know, totally, absolutely. So, but when the trespass was there wasn't a certainty as to whether that was going to work or not. They tricked this old lady into taking out a personal one after she had already sold me some tickets to a fundraiser. And so she made up the story as like I was impersonating someone else to buy the tickets. And anyway, we went to the hearing. She admitted that she didn't really need it, but she didn't like me disrupting meetings, even though there was no evidence of me disrupting meetings. As you saw, I was just sitting there waiting for the meeting to start when they, kicked me out. And here's where the local politics and your local elections really intersect here. Judges and district attorneys are elected in many municipalities, and in my county, which is a solid blue county, the judge that I saw, Judge Flight, didn't rule immediately. He made a comment that made it in the paper, basically that he was going to rule that following week, but it's been over 100 days now. And so without actually ruling on the temporary protective order, I'm in flux here. So if I go to a meeting, they can say, well, we have this protective order because it hasn't been ruled on. I can say, well, it was temporary, so, it's arguable as to whether it's active or not. But the fact that the judge hasn't ruled is incredibly suspicious at this point because the whole temporary protective order isn't something that should be abused like that. If someone needs protection, then you go to court, you get a protective order out, and hopefully, you make the case that, that this person, shouldn't make contact with you or be within a certain distance of you. And that's something that, we need, like legally, like absolutely, that has utility. But if it's going to be abused just to keep people from public meetings, then at that point, we're infringing on First Amendment rights. And it's an odd, it's a strange and sort of a dangerous legal precedent if political parties are able to essentially, functionally squelch dissent by saying anyone that disagrees with them is a threat and therefore has to be, kept away from using their First Amendment right to assembly and free speech. And so that's where we're at now. Is this democratically elected judge has not chosen to rule on something. It's still sitting on his desk, and I've been to the clerk of court now twice. This last time was maybe 2 weeks ago. She looks at my file and she goes, that's interesting. Because it's very odd to see something like that just sitting on a desk there. And so, I'm obviously, as someone who's pending some decision here, I've been advised not to, make much comment. But it's all public now. All this has been, in the paper, and everyone's waiting. But in the meantime, they're trying to spread this mythos that I'm some sort of crazy threat to the party or these individuals, and it's unfortunately, it's seeping into, again, sort of this culture of keeping young people, keeping progressives away from the apparatus itself, or campaigns, which is why they use that argument to have me taken away from those shifts there in Georgia, which is why right now I'm just outside of Fayetteville, headed up to Boston and New Hampshire to work on some other campaigns. So anyway, yeah, so that's sort of a big overarch from the beginning to this point. And I would hope that folks, really understand that some of the reason we don't know what we don't know is because we're purposely being kept out of the rooms where decisions are made. the media, I think, probably knows that better than than just your common consumer or viewer, voyeur of politics, because the media has to jump through hoops a lot of times just to get the story, just to get the details, or to try and get a semblance of sort of the meat of something that's happening, clear evidence. But so for citizens, we have to be especially vigilant in that these people are making decisions on our behalf. It's literally their job to manage the money, to create outcomes, to design our cities and our neighborhoods in ways that down the road will either prove incredibly progressive and uplifting, or incredibly destructive. And if we're not watching, then money's just going to get moved around and end up in pockets and end up with interests that really don't have our future at heart. So I know it's a crazy story, and I hope folks will continue to follow and see where it leads here. But we have a positive following now. There are folks that are coming to me because they have a similar story, or they have a story at their county or district level that needs telling too, or where they're looking for allies, right? Because a lot of this too is divide and conquer. If they can make us feel like we're the crazy people, or we're not to be trusted or not to be listened to, then we will become our own recluse in this political system. And the worst thing we can do, though, is the best thing I should say that we could do to combat that is to find each other and form real coalitions that are issue driven, and really, as far as the politics goes and the political bureaucracy goes, focus on transparency, inclusion, and growth of our voices out here. So from Georgia to Texas and everywhere between.
And beyond, yeah.
And beyond, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, because before we got on, I was reading an article that Bernie Sanders had posted about authoritarian access, like internationally, and how we need an international progressive front as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
definitely beyond. But like I tell some of my friends and family at home, focus what you can, like locally, as much as you can, because if you see stuff that you can't influence, it's very naturally going to make you upset. But if you can focus on something that you can influence, do it. Even if you get arrested.
Yeah, well, and I think through the course of this, it's been about 2 years since the start of kind of my speaking out and calling folks to the mat on just not following the rules, which is not something that anyone has to be super skilled or aggressive at doing. Literally, if you understand Robert's Rules of Order, a point of order is probably the most powerful thing a citizen or a member of a board or a member of a neighborhood association can use when something's going wrong, because it stops everything. It makes it creates the obligation for the chair and the parliamentarian or the secretary to cite the bylaws. So the laws that have been passed for a reason, and they need to be followed, and they need to apply to everyone equally and evenly, appropriately. And so when something's going wrong, and our own leaders are not, aren't being held accountable, the best thing we can do is call a point of order to demand that legal get involved and say, what is the law here? What are we supposed to be doing here? And conversely, if the laws are unfair, if the laws are or unfairly enforced, then same idea. We have we should understand these laws or understand how to improve them. I've always said that if I could wave from my wand, law would be something we teach in high school, because unfortunately what happens is unless you're a lawyer, you're just not in that class of folks that can defend themselves. And in the American justice system, so much of the success of a case is tied to how much money you can raise, or how many high-powered attorneys or firms you can basically take on to your cause. I was fortunate in the trespass defense, anyway, excuse me, that I had some pro bono help. But if I am to, or if our coalition here is to go on offense at all with things like First Amendment infringement or libel, that's going to cost some more money. That's actually going to, that's where the pro bono on contingency is very hard to get from a lot of attorneys. So if anybody listening knows somebody, let me know. But in the meantime, we do have a GoFundMe that we're working on. And the other thing is just always looking ahead, because we've got everyone who is a part of that bureaucratic gatekeeping, seat warming sort of machine of the party. They are elected, so it's about figuring out. So when are they up? Basically, when is their term up, and making sure that when it is up, they're not just running their own election for themselves with their friends, and that's it. There are public elections. The Democratic Party in any state, any county, has authority basically given to it by a board of elections, and boards of elections are supposed to make sure that all of their processes are public, and public involvement or the public can participate. Of course, some of those laws are different. There's different features of open primary and closed primary states, where in closed primary states, folks would need to register with the party in order to participate in some of their elections, inter-party wise. But in Georgia, for example, and in I want to say it's 25 plus states that you have open primaries where it's very easy. You don't have to register as a partisan just to be involved in their elections. But they're deciding who speaks for you at the party level, in some cases at your precinct. Or if not your precinct, then at the county level, and if not the county level,
right,
then maybe your city county, if you have depending on the organization of your city. And at the very least, every 4 years we have these conventions, and it's very easy for folks to become delegates.
Yeah.
If you want, if you actually want to run to become a delegate, and then influence things, at the convention. But you got to plan, and that's where organizing comes into play. That's where the activist class is really important, because we need to organize with intention. We need to organize with a deliberate plan, and we need to understand where these dates are going to fall. If our delegates are going to be selected this year for convention in 2 years from now or 4 years from now, then now's the time for us to organize our neighbors, our neighborhoods, our campuses, our places of employment, so that our demographics, our age group, or maybe our racial background, maybe our if we're a religious minority, or if we identify as maybe maybe you do labor that your teams need more representation, or you're part of the Fight for 15. Great way to organize is to get those folks bought in and representing themselves and you at your county party level, because guaranteed a lot of these counties are probably still led by, and this is what I find out in a lot of different places. County parties a lot of times are led by the same people that have always been there for the last 20, 30 years. And, this is bordering on ageism, but, the critique is often that it's a geriatric club. It's it's a retirement club, because these folks have more time on their hands, and so
right,
they're involved. And my coalition includes older folks, for sure. Okay. I'm not I think the progressive movement is ageless. But it's one of those things where other demographics will get left out. And I was just at a function 2 weeks ago where I was obviously the young person in the room, and I had folks walk up to me and want to ask me, how do we get young folks involved? Well, we have to educate, we have to inform, we have to open the door.
you have to stop
not
resting.
telling people, not educating folks on the process, and having them arrested is counterintuitive to that, and that's where it's going to cost us elections. We're not going to out-corrupt or out-capitulate the right. So we've got to do a better job of the exact opposite. Be more transparent, be more inclusive, get ahead of the curve, instead of just shooting ourselves in the foot here. But anyway. Yeah.
So to wrap up, a lot of people don't know where to start, activism wise, with the party wise.
Sure.
Could you talk about precinct chairs, county judges, things like that where normal people could just get involved.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you're listening or you're watching this and you don't know who your county commissioner is, or maybe even your mayor, or maybe the way your county or district or municipality is organized, maybe you have a county chair. Not knowing those people is not a problem. You get to know those people along the way. You get to know how it works along the way. There is absolutely no prerequisite for getting involved. If you don't know what county you live in, or you don't know what the city, organization is, Google it, find out. Look at your voter registration card. Look at your license plate. Those are the clues, but that's really all you need to get started. Because your city should have a website. Your county party should have a website. Now, I can say this too. There are some counties that do not have an organization. If your county doesn't have a Democratic Party organization, you can start it. You can be the chair, right? You don't have to know these people. You can actually become them if you're just in a place that doesn't have the organization. Now, if you're in the middle of a highly active Democratic city or community, then more than likely you're going to have an infrastructure there and you're going to get to know them. But Facebook, right? Most of these folks have pages. If not, then a website. And if for some reason you don't see any of that, they either don't exist or they just don't have the infrastructure built to advertise that. Go to the state party website, right? So Democratic Party of Texas, Ohio, Michigan, Georgia, what have you. On those websites, they should have contact information to your local organization. And every organization should meet pretty regularly. If they're not meeting on a monthly basis, then at least a quarterly basis. Meetings are not sexy, right? It's not like I say meeting and everyone's like, oh, I can't wait.
They're not sexy.
But that's on us too, right?
Yeah.
Part of the reason meetings aren't sexy is because we don't go to them.
We don't make them sexy.
What's that?
So we don't make them sexy.
So we're not making them attractive to other folks like us, or that want to talk about things that we want to talk about. And so unfortunately that's part of why meetings are so lame is, you get there and it's the same people talking about the same thing that they always talk about, or the same, set of things that, that they organize around. And, that's part of why we aren't heard. I was recently interviewed and asked about why young people don't vote. And I said, well, it's a vicious cycle. We aren't messaged to because the people that run these campaigns and the people that run these parties don't count us as voters, right? They look at the past. They look at who has voted already, and they try to get those folks. They're not actively trying to grow and build because that's hard. But honestly, that's where the really important work needs to be done now, right? If we're going to defeat Trump and the minions, if we're going to, turn these state houses, if we're going to have any government that has a semblance of progressive, democratic socialist, or, otherwise leftist ideals, then we're going to have to participate. We're going to have to show up. We're going to have to make demands. And we're going to have to bring some numbers. If we're on Facebook or we're on Twitter or we're on, Instagram and the rest, Snapchat, that's fine. That's great. Zero decisions are being made in those on those mediums, right? All of the decisions that are ultimately going to be voted on, the language of ballot items, the many times, who's kind of co-signed to be the dominant candidates, those decisions are being made and designed at these meetings. And they're happening around, in your neighborhood or around the block or in your city on a monthly basis. And even if you can't attend personally, then, hopefully your city, your municipality has a streaming service where they actually show these things. And if for whatever reason you are meeting averse, maybe start with the clubs, start with a social organization. Maybe there's a social event that's put on where you can start to get to know folks. And here's sort of a piece of encouragement for folks. A lot of times, and hopefully too, also my experience is not like, it's not super unique. It happens, but it's not happening everywhere, right? So your experience could be totally different. You could start showing up, and because you're younger and because there are already progressives, for example, on the executive committee or part of your city government, they'll be excited to see you. They'll want to give you opportunities. They'll want to get in your ear and they'll want to take, from your suggestions. But you never know until you shake a hand and take a card and, keep showing up, follow them on Facebook, follow their Twitter kind of thing, become active in those conversations. Because it's happening a lot faster now. I got started back in 2007 and, I just kind of worked my way up through campaigns. But right now, so I'm 30 this year. I'm kind of like right in the middle of the millennial. I'm seeing, the next generation really, obviously emboldened probably by like a lot of just news, right, of the day, sort of everything coming out of the White House or, just different aspects of our just mismanagement of government up and down. Or folks that are, newly inspired by Bernie Sanders, what have you. It's a lot faster now. There are so many different ways to plug in. If you are an activist, if you do want to make a career of this kind of thing, if you want to be more involved with in the party bureaucracy, if you want to run for office, if you want to learn how to run for office, if you want to help your peers run for different things, there's a whole network out here, a whole industry now that folks can plug into. So please follow me. I would be happy. I would love to connect on Facebook, Joe Tremor Traina, and on Twitter, it's Traina Thoughts. And or if you comment below and you just want me to connect with you, I will do that because that's what it's all about. We've got to grow, got to find our people out here, got to build a tribe.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining me. This has been an interview, long time coming. Good luck out there.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm headed to New Hampshire. I can't say all of the campaigns I'm going to be working on for sure yet, but look out for New Hampshire's District 1 and Yes on 3, which is an expansion of their employment non-discrimination or non-discrimination widely to include our trans sisters and brothers. So important stuff on the cutting edge here. Follow me. I'm following you, Sam. You're out there really representing Houston, so I appreciate learning more about things your way. Independent journalism.
Yeah. So, well, thanks again. I'll be seeing you around.
That's right, Sam. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And we're going to scroll back over here. So, that was Joe from Georgia. If you're just now catching this live interview, do not worry. This is going to be published and edited by Colin, our video editor, to make it nice and pretty so you can follow up on it. So last but not least, I don't know if you guys noticed, but we did start a GoFundMe page this morning, well, this afternoon. Please check it out, gofundme.com/statusquo-news. And yeah, the link will be in the info box, like in the bottom info box, and hope to see you guys around. Bye!